just on our first slide. We're just getting started for a little review of the endocrine system. So, once again, we really want to think about the function of every system in our body. And for the endocrine system, it is all about sending and receiving hormones. Hormones are our messengers. They're going to help regulate the body's response to tons of different things. That's really the first thing we should be talking about is the hormone. Chemical messengers, they travel through the blood to tissues and organs. And when they get there, they influence bodily functions. So, kind of broadly, overall, we can put them in two big buckets. We have our lipid-based hormones and our water-soluble hormones. So, fats and waters. For our fats, they are fat soluble, which means they can go through that lipid bilayer cell membrane. So they get right into the cell and can alter the expression of certain genes. Versus more commonly, our water hormones, they're made from proteins, amino acids. Because they're not fat soluble, they're not made of lipids, they can't easily go through that cell. So they're going to bind to surface receptors on what we call target cells. Basically, if I'm a hormone and I want to influence, let's say, the pancreas, I'm going to be the hormone insulin, and I want to go influence the pancreas. I have to go make my way and find this receptor to latch onto and tell the pancreas what I want it to do. That binding triggers a series of reaction inside the cells. There's oftentimes like multiple lines of messengers, like kind of a little bit of a domino effect that carry that signal out and do what we need it to do. Okay. Those places where the doing is happening are the endocrine structures, the glands, the organs, the tissues, okay? They're releasing the hormone and they're receiving the hormone. We got a bunch of endocrine organs to talk about, okay? Pancreas, the gonads, so ovaries in females, testes in males, the pituitary gland up here in the brain, pineal gland, hypothalamus, all up here in the brain, hypothalamus, adrenal glands, thymus, thyroid, parathyroids, tons of different structures. All of these structures are part of the endocrine system. They make hormones, they are receiving sites for hormones, and then, that influences all sorts of things. So it only makes sense to kind of go one by one. We'll do some practice questions in there to keep it fun as we go. But let's just start up top. Let's start with that pancreas. Okay. Where is it at? Behind the stomach, kind of in our abdomen over here. The hormone the pancreas produces is insulin and glucagon. And they have opposite effects. Insulin helps lower our blood glucose, or our blood sugar is what we mostly call it. And glucagon helps raise our blood glucose. So, in combination, insulin produced by the pancreas is going to help regulate and keep that blood sugar where we want it to be, right in the middle, okay? Next structure, further down, we have our gonads. Now, these are going to produce different hormones depending on male versus female, ovary versus testes. So, estrogen, progesterone are going to be the two big hormones to think about in the female reproductive cycle, okay? We produce estrogen throughout the beginning of the menstrual phase, the endometrial lining thickens. Testosterone is produced towards the end, helps prepare the endometrial lining for implantation. If implantation doesn't occur, that progesterone drops off and we have the menses. If implantation does occur, progesterone stays really high and supports a developing embryo. Now, testosterone over on the male side, and I do want to just say males and females all have all of these hormones, but they're in different amounts. That's going to help with secondary sexual characteristics, sperm development, maturation, etc. So, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, those are the big hormones to think about when it comes to the structure of the gonads. Okay, let's get into the brain. We had 3 different glands in the brain that were really tied to the endocrine system. First, my favorite one here, pituitary. Often we call it the master gland because it's kind of like in charge of the other endocrine glands that we're talking about. It is behind the bridge of your nose, so like back here in the base of your skull. And that's why if you get a head injury right up here, we got to watch out for disorders of the pituitary gland. Okay, so it's in control, it's the master. Two other organs or structures, I should say, up in the brain, pineal and hypothalamus. The pineal gland, small pea-shaped gland, it is deep in the brain. And the one thing I want you to think of when you hear that gland is melatonin. I bet you guys have all heard of melatonin. You know it has to do with sleep, right? It goes up with our circadian rhythm when light goes down. So it starts getting dark. Our pineal gland's like, oh my gosh, it's about time to go to bed. I'm going to make some melatonin. Melatonin helps make you sleepy. So it's regulating those sleep patterns with the circadian rhythm. That's the big thing to think about. Pineal gland, melatonin. Okay, last one up in the brain is the hypothalamus. This is like the body's thermostat. It's going to regulate hunger, thirst, temperature, sleep. It helps control the release of hormones from the pituitary gland, which of course we know that's the master gland. So lots and lots of control from that hypothalamus. Thermostat, keeping balance. Who can tell me what's the fancy word for that balance or that regulation in the anatomy world? Starts with an H. Might be up on the slide here. If we're trying to stay in balance, does anybody know what we call that? It's kind of the overarching principle of the endocrine system. Florentina's got it. It's that homeostasis. You're 100% right. Homeostasis, that regulation, that balance, that's what the endocrine system's trying to do, right? Okay, so a couple more structures to talk about, and then we'll get into some practice questions together. The adrenal glands. These sit on top of the kidneys. The hormones that they make are your stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. We also call this epinephrine, okay? So if you've ever been having an allergic reaction and someone needed an EpiPen, it's that hormone epinephrine. And we make it in our bodies every day by the adrenal glands. It helps the body respond to stress. So if our body is stressed out because we're in anaphylactic shock, we give that epinephrine, okay? That is a stress response. Adrenal glands, stress. Think cortisol and epinephrine. All right. Now we're going to talk about the thymus. This is in the heart in front of the trachea, so right about here. And this one is interesting because it's actually more important in the early years of our life. So, childhood into like young adolescence, I want you to think thymus has a T and it's developing T cells. Now, we're not talking about the immune system today. We did that like a week or two ago in a different lecture. But if you remember the T cells, those are white blood cells that are part of that adaptive immune response. So they recognize like, oh, there's this pathogen that I saw. I need to be able to go attack that. So having our thymus is part of the immune system. It helps protect the body from infections and diseases, but as you age, it shrinks and becomes less active because it's already built out the immune system. It's already been exposed to all the things and made all the T cells that need to be activated. So thymus, important in childhood, shrinks and becomes less active throughout life. Okay, now one other, well, technically two other, but they're in the same spot up in the neck here, thyroid and parathyroid. Okay, the thyroid regulates metabolism and then very importantly, calcium. It produces thyroid hormone. We actually have two types of thyroid hormone. There is T3 and T4. And I want you to think of thyroid hormone like gas in the car. It makes you go. It turns you on. It brings your energy up. So the thyroid gland is going to make more and more and more of it. Boom, we've got energy. We're good to go. It also makes calcitonin, which helps regulate how much calcium is in our blood. So that is a really fun way that the endocrine system plugs into our fluids and electrolytes, keeping that calcium balanced. Okay, now the other one, the parathyroid glands, are actually four. We got four of them, and they're on that thyroid. So parathyroid, like around the thyroid. Four little dots. You see them, kind of right there. One, two, three, four. And they make parathyroid hormone. Thankfully, no one got creative with that name. They made that nice and easy for us. Parathyroid hormone, essential for calcium balance. The more parathyroid hormone we have, the more calcium we get in the blood. The less parathyroid hormone we have, the less calcium in the blood. How is it doing this? It basically controls, because our bones are where we store our calcium, right? They're kind of like the bank for calcium. Parathyroid hormone talks to the bones and says, hey, I need a little more calcium. Let's put it in the bloodstream. Or, hey, we got a lot of calcium. Let's store it in the bones. It's controlling that interaction. Again, homeostasis, how much calcium is in the bones, the blood. That's what parathyroid hormone does, coming from those parathyroid glands. Okay, that was a lot of information we just went through. How are you guys feeling about that? Do we want to do a quick little recap of all the structures, what hormone they produce, and what that hormone does? Do you guys feel like you have got it? Where are we at? Okay. So, for a recap here, pancreas, insulin and glucagon regulates blood sugar. Gonads, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, they are regulating reproduction. Okay. Pancreas, gonads. Next, we've got all our brain glands in the endocrine system. One, pituitary, master gland, controlling all of the others. Pineal gland, melatonin, helping us with sleep. Then the hypothalamus is that body's thermostat, helping control the pituitary and regulating homeostasis throughout the body. So, hypothalamus controls pituitary, pituitary master gland, pineal, we have melatonin helping with sleep. All right, down in the belly, adrenal glands, top of the kidneys. Adrenal glands, we think stress. They make cortisol, they make adrenaline. We respond to stress with those hormones. Next, we have the thymus, really important in childhood, produces T cells. And then lastly, the thyroid gland, thyroid hormone, energy. Thyroid hormone is gas in the car, it makes us go. Behind it, we had those four small parathyroid glands. They help with calcium balance. Thyroid, thyroid hormone, energy. Parathyroid, parathyroid hormone helps with calcium. Okay, before we do our practice questions, do you guys have any questions? The endocrine system is complicated, so we're going to get into what these pre-nursing questions could look like. We're going to pull it up and we are going to go through some practice together and we'll talk about it in real time. Any questions that you are like dying to know before we practice together, though? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put up our first question then. Which of the following describes the function of the pancreas? Does it release digestive enzymes, release molecules that affect glucose, release chyme neutralizing molecules, release molecules that regulate sleep? Okay, I'm seeing A, The function of the pancreas. What do we got? Just pop it over in the chat, comments, whatever works for you. Say it out loud, write it in your notes. Commit to an answer, though. However you're going to do it, I really don't care. Commit to an answer. Even if you're not sure, just take your best guess and we'll review it together. So, what describes the pancreas? What describes the pancreas? Oop, thought it was going to circle the right answer. The correct answer here is B, releasing molecules that affect glucose level. Yes, and Zumu, you have got it. It is insulin and glucagon that are the names of those molecules. So I had a few people put A, releasing digestive enzymes. And you know what? I honestly should revise this question because the pancreas also has an exocrine function where it releases digestive enzymes and it helps break down food. So A is also a correct answer. We talked about today B, releasing molecules that affect glucose levels. This is the endocrine function of the pancreas. There are specific cells called the beta islets of Langerhans that the pancreas is responsible for secreting that hormone insulin and that hormone glucagon. And those molecules affect the glucose level. Remember, with insulin, the glucose in the blood goes down. It reduces our blood sugar. And with glucagon, it's the opposite. It increases how much glucose is in our blood sugar up. So homeostasis, keeping glucose levels in check. That is the endocrine function of the pancreas. The exocrine function is A, and we didn't talk about that today. We talked about that in our GI lecture. But remember, the pancreas makes things like lipase, amylase, and those break down our food. So A is what the pancreas does for the GI system. And B is what the pancreas does for our endocrine system. Now, chyme neutralizing molecules, no, that's not something for pancreas. And D, releasing molecules that regulate sleep, no. Tell me the structure and the hormone that D is referring to. What's the molecule that regulates sleep? And what structure releases it? Yes, the pineal gland is the structure and it releases melatonin. You got it. Absolutely. Melatonin is that molecule that regulates sleep. Remember, it has to do with that circadian rhythm. Okay, so next question to check for understanding which structure of the endocrine system develops mature T cells? Is it the pituitary gland, the adrenal gland, the thyroid, or the thymus? Okay, good. Florentina's got it. Zumu's got it. Put your answer in the chats, in the comments. Take your best guess. If you're not sure, we'll go back and review. No problem. Siam's got it. Okay. Good work, everyone. The correct answer is that the endocrine structure that develops mature T cells is the thymus, D. So I want you to see T and think T for thymus, T for T cells. But there is one other thing up here that starts with a T, the thyroid. So let's make sure we review that. The thyroid produces thyroid hormone. And remember, that's what I want you to think of as gas in the car. Thyroid hormone is your energy. It is what helps make you go. It turns on your car, okay? So thyroid hormone from the thyroid, that makes your energy. Thymus is that gland that is more active in childhood. It's in your mediastinum up here in your chest, and it kind of atrophies as you get older once you've already made all those T cells that your immune system needs. So thymus, T cells, really good. Okay, one more check, and then I've got an additional component here that I want to talk about. Which organ makes insulin and glucagon? We just talked about your thymus, your adrenal gland, your gallbladder, or your pancreas. What organ makes insulin and glucagon? Good. Okay. Thank you, Zumu. Absolutely. Put it in the chat there. What do you think? Absolutely. We talked about the pancreas a lot. Insulin and glucagon from the pancreas, those are the molecules that regulate blood glucose. And honestly, all of this is all about homeostasis. So that is that stable internal environment. The glucose goes up, we want to get it down. The glucose goes down, we want to get it up. Back to this set point. And there are kind of two mechanisms or ways that we can achieve homeostasis. We can use a positive feedback loop, or we can use a negative feedback loop. And we're going to talk about the negative first because that's most of the examples that we've been doing, for example, with the blood glucose. So we want to maintain the blood glucose at about 70 to 110. That's kind of the normal number of glucose molecules to be floating around in your bloodstream. So let's say that the blood sugar increases. Perhaps I have had myself a nice Krispy Kreme donut and ooh, it was delicious, but I got a lot more glucose hanging out in my blood. So the liver is going to take some of that glucose and store it for a rainy day. It's going to tuck it away in the liver as something called glycogen. The pancreas is going to release some insulin so that the insulin can unlock my cells and I can put some of that glucose inside of them and it can use it as fuel. And by doing that, the pancreas releasing insulin, the liver storing glucose as glycogen, it brings that blood sugar back down. Now we're back here in homeostasis. The effect of glucose is bringing that blood sugar up. Glucose is sugar, you guys. Glucose, sugar. And when I eat glucose in the form of my Krispy Kreme donut, it goes into my blood and my body needs to use that glucose to power my cells. Glucose essentially is energy, fuel, right? Fast carbs. So the pancreas will release insulin, open up my cells, and then that sugar can go inside and it can fuel my cells. It can use it as energy. With the leftovers, the liver can store some of it for a rainy day as glycogen. And that in turn gets my blood sugar back down where I want it to be. Blood glucose went up with the donut. We made that insulin and it came back down to a normal blood sugar, homeostasis. Now, let's say that I go and decide I'm going to run a marathon after eating my Krispy Kreme donut, and my blood glucose level decreases. It goes down. Oh my goodness. Now I have a low blood sugar. It is less than 70. Well, I need to get it back up to maintain homeostasis. So, what's that hormone that increases blood sugar? It is the glucagon. My pancreas now makes glucagon and it gets that sugar back up. The liver can also take some of that glycogen that I stored for a rainy day and convert it back into glucose. More glucose, higher blood sugar. We are back to homeostasis. So, this whole system, you guys, is called a negative feedback loop. Something goes up, we bring it back down. Something goes down, we bring it back up. And we stay in homeostasis. Okay. Another example of this is how thyroid hormone is regulated with our thyroid stimulating hormone T3 and T4. A lot of our body's processes are regulated in a negative feedback loop. Here's one more picture that kind of gives you an example of the loop in a full circle. So, we eat our breakfast. This person didn't have a Krispy Kreme donut. The glucose levels went up and beta islets of Langerhans produces insulin. Insulin goes into the bloodstream and causes that sugar to go into the cells so we can actually use it. We store that glucose, it goes back down to normal. We're in homeostasis. But then I skip lunch and my blood glucose goes down. The alpha cells of the pancreas make glucagon, and glucagon increases that blood sugar back to homeostasis. Does that make sense? Does negative feedback make sense to you guys? Goes up, we come back down, goes down, we come back up. We stay homeostasis in the middle. That is a negative feedback loop. Give me a heart, thumbs up. Or tell me, no, you don't get it, Morgan. Go back. You're a crazy person. Okay. I take your silence as understanding. I hope you guys got it. You're going to need to know this on those entrance exams. The other way we can regulate hormones, a positive feedback loop. We got a negative feedback loop, then of course we've got a positive feedback loop. These don't dampen changes, they amplify them. So in a negative feedback loop, my blood sugar went up and I brought it down. In a positive feedback loop, something goes up and we keep pushing it up. We amplify the changes to move the body away from homeostasis temporarily to achieve an outcome. And the classic example of this is childbirth. The hormone oxytocin is what causes contractions. And of course, contractions are going to push the baby out of the birth canal. Okay, so here is how that works in a positive feedback loop. The baby's head is pressing on the cervix. That's right here. And that stimulation sends a signal up to the brain that says, hey, baby's head is right here. Let's send some oxytocin so we can get contracting and have this baby. Okay, nerve impulses from the cervix go to the brain. The brain says, yes, let's make oxytocin. Oxytocin goes to the uterus and it stimulates contractions. Oxytocin triggers contractions. That contraction pushes the baby's head further and further against the cervix, pushes on the cervix, and that goes to the brain and says, let's make more oxytocin. And that goes to the uterus and says, contract. That contraction pushes the baby's head against the cervix. Do you see how this goes in a loop? More and more and more, we are amplifying the change so that the baby will be born. This ends with an event, an outcome that we want to happen. Obviously, in this example, the baby is delivered, and then we no longer have that pressure on the cervix, so the feedback loop ends. This is very different than in the negative feedback loop where something went up and we tried to drive it back to homeostasis. In positive feedback, something went up and we pushed it up more. Okay, so a couple of really good questions popping up. What are the differences between oxytocin and prolactin? I want you to think about oxytocin as the number one, it's the hormone for contractions. It's also like our happy, love, feel good. It drives bonding and interaction. But in the context of childbirth, oxytocin contractions. Prolactin, breastfeeding. That's going to help with milk letdown and regulating lactation. So I want you to think prolactin, milk, oxytocin, contractions. Those are going to be the differentiators for those two hormones. Now, I also had a question in the negative feedback loop. Hopefully you guys understand blood sugar goes up, insulin brings it down. Blood sugar goes down, glucagon brings it up. But what about the liver? We've got this extra little bit of information here. The liver is kind of like our backup in this situation. When the blood sugar goes up, it can store extra glucose as glycogen to save it for a rainy day, and that will help get the blood sugar back down. When the blood sugar goes down, it can take that glycogen that it stored for a rainy day and convert it into glucose to get the blood sugar up. So the liver works with insulin and glucagon in a consort to help maintain that homeostasis. It's a kind, extra little system, a backup. So, fun fact, this is why little babies are more likely to become hypoglycemic, low blood sugar, because they don't have mature livers and they have a hard time storing glucose as glycogen. That's why babies have to eat every 2 hours. I would like to eat every 2 hours, but I don't have to because my liver has glycogen that it can break down and help maintain my blood sugar in homeostasis. Little babies can't do that so much, so they are dependent on eating more frequently. Yeah. Okay. I've got a couple of little check in questions for you guys here. Want to make sure everyone's feeling good as we get close to wrapping it up. Tell me, insulin is released by what and decreases blood sugar levels by what? The amount of sugar stored in cells. And I'll give you guys some testing strategies here as we go through. Give you a minute. Okay. So, first, when you have a question in this format with the blanks, this is pretty common on the T's. And we come here and we see A and B has adrenal, C and D has pancreas. Focus on one blank at a time. So, insulin is released by what gland? Just ask yourself that one simple question. Well, we know it's the pancreas, right? Okay, so it's going to be C or D. Now I can focus on the second blank here as an own question. Um, it decreases blood sugar levels by blank the amount of sugar stored in cells. So I'm going to put this in my own words. Say, okay, insulin does what to blood sugar levels? Decreases them, right? It opens up those cells and it moves that sugar in the cell instead of the blood. Insulin decreases the amount of sugar in the blood, but what the amount of sugar stored in cells. Insulin increases the amount of sugar stored in cells. So my correct answer here is C. My test taking tip for you guys, because these fill in the blank type of things where you've got two options, I break it down into one question at a time. And by the time I got to the second blank, I had a 50-50 chance. So, yep, I can definitely repeat. Insulin is released by the pancreas and it decreases blood sugar levels by what? To the amount of sugar stored in cells. It decreases blood sugar levels by increasing how much sugar is stored in cells. So I always think of insulin like a key, and our cells are like a door that key is unlocking. The insulin unlocks the door, and then the sugar can go inside. That's where we want the sugar to go because the cells are using that as energy. So insulin key unlocks cell, and the sugar goes inside. So insulin increases the amount of sugar in cells, and that decreases the blood sugar. Blood sugar is just how much sugar, how much glucose is left inside your bloodstream. We don't want a lot, right? We want that like 70 to 110. Anything more, and we want to get some insulin to open up the cells so the sugar can go inside. Okay, last one. Just giving you a true false A B here. Tell me which statement correctly contrasts a positive versus a negative feedback mechanism. Good. Yep, you got it. A. Positive loops amplify, negative loops bring it back to internal balance, homeostasis. And this is what you see the most of. But when there is an outcome like childbirth, we want to amplify that body condition. And that is a positive feedback loop. Okay. So I am going to end here. I want to make sure that you guys have the notes from this lecture. Can you guys tell me in the chat, do you guys already have an Archer account? And if so, I'll just show you where they are at. Or do you guys need me to show you where to get that Archer account so that you can get the notes for today, that you can review bonus questions, etc., etc. Okay, cool. For those of you who don't already have it, archerreview.com, I can go ahead and pop that over here in the chat for everybody. That's where you're going to go to sign up for your free account to be able to get the notes for today. You're going to go to nursing, and then you're going to click on the T's over here. So when you come down, it'll give you a rundown of the questions, the subjects. You'll see all of the free webinars right here that you guys can join. And then you'll see all of the options here. So the Q Bank, you can go ahead and get for free for a week. Try it out, see if it is helpful for you. If you want to get the notes for today, go ahead and come over to Sure Pass Pro. Grab either the 30, 90, 100-day combo, whatever time frame you have. And when you sign in to your Sure Pass combo, it will look like this. You will have your create tests where you can actually go do all your practice questions, your on-demand videos where you can get all of the notes, and you will have access to all of the live webinars. So later today, we have a scientific reasoning practice test with Shelly. That's going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern. And then on Thursday, we have a chemistry practice test. And on Friday, more chemistry. So pretty much every day, we've got some sort of lecture for free, and you can get to all of them in your dashboard. To go ahead and get the notes for those, let's just say go to your on-demand videos. And I'm going to search endocrine. Here's my endocrine system video. So I'll go ahead and click on that. We'll click pause so this video doesn't play right now. But this will give you everything we just went over in more depth and at a little bit of a slower pace so you can watch along with it. And then you can come and get the handout that we went over today so you can actually see all of the notes that we went through. And you can also get a cheat sheet. So all of those major things from the endocrine system, all in one sheet. We've got your positive, negative feedback loop, homeostasis, all those key structures and functions, all in a nice like 2-pager. So if you're in an anatomy class, you're like, studying for an exam, that is a good recap for you. So that is where you go to get the notes from today if you need it. You can scan this QR code to go ahead and get to that. As you saw, it starts at like $29 for the 30-day. Or if you just need practice questions, we are happy to provide that for you for free. You get a whole week of the Q Bank at no cost, so you can try it out. But with that being said, what other questions do you guys have? We went through the endocrine system. You guys have got the resources. You know where to get the notes from today. You know where to go for extra practice questions. Are there any other questions that I can help you with? Okay. That sounds good. Well, again, my name is Morgan. I am so happy we got to review endocrine together today. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you ever need us. You've got our email right down there at prenursing@archerreview.com. And we hope to see you later today to do some scientific reasoning. We'll talk to you guys later.